All offseason, the debate wouldn't die. Is Shedeur Sanders really the guy in Cleveland or just the loudest name in the room? Analysts questioned it. Fans argued about it. But then one voice from inside the locker room spoke up, and suddenly the entire conversation started to shift. All offseason, the loudest voices haven't been inside the Browns' locker room. They've been on radio shows, debate panels, and social media timelines. Analysts throwing out names, fans arguing about hypotheticals, speculation flying everywhere. But here's the part that quietly changes everything: none of those voices line up behind center on Sundays. When Quinshon Judkins speaks, it hits different. This isn't a former player with an agenda. It's not a media personality chasing clicks. It's a teammate, a starting running back, a player who shares the huddle, the practice field, and the locker room with Shedeur Sanders every single day. And when Judkins was asked about Shedeur being QB1, he didn't hesitate. He didn't dodge. He didn't give a safe, politically correct answer. He said it's fun. That might sound simple, but in an NFL locker room, fun carries weight. It means confidence, it means rhythm, it means players believe something good is building. Judkins went further, calling Shedeur a great talent, praising his personality, highlighting their attention to detail in practice. That's not surface-level hype, that's a glimpse into daily work. And then came the most important part. Judkins said the guys believe in him. In today's NFL, that's everything. A quarterback can have arm talent, he can have stats, he can have hype, but if the locker room isn't behind him, it falls apart fast. We've seen it before across the league: talented quarterbacks losing the room and watching seasons spiral. Belief isn't automatic, it's earned. What makes this even more interesting is the timing. All offseason, outside conversations have floated around Cleveland. Other quarterback names mentioned, rumors tossed into the air. Some fans questioning whether the Browns are fully committed. Reports claiming competition could be tighter than expected. Whether fair or not, the noise has been constant. But inside the building, the message feels different. Judkins didn't talk about uncertainty, he didn't talk about open battles, he talked about leadership, about having a voice, about relationships. That's quarterback language, that's franchise language. And here's the reality: players know. They see who stays late, who commands the huddle, who owns mistakes, who brings energy when practice gets tough. Teammates don't fake belief, especially not publicly. Analysts can speculate all day, media can debate narratives. But when a key offensive weapon says the locker room believes in QB1, that carries more weight than any offseason headline. Because belief inside the building always matters more than noise outside of it. And that's when the conversation quietly started to shift. But belief inside the locker room doesn't erase the noise outside of it. And this offseason in Cleveland, the noise has been loud. The moment Shedeur Sanders was connected to the Browns, the conversation split in two directions. One side saw upside, leadership, confidence, a quarterback with presence. The other side questioned whether the hype was outpacing the proof, and that divide hasn't gone away. Names started floating almost immediately. Veteran quarterbacks linked in speculation, backup options casually mentioned on local radio. Some analysts suggesting the Browns should keep their options open. Others arguing the front office might still be evaluating long-term stability. None of it confirmed, but enough of it repeated to spark debate. Some fans believe it's just off-season filler, talk for the sake of talk. Reports claim teams often entertain multiple possibilities this time of year. Rumors suggest front offices do far more due diligence than the public ever sees. That's normal in the NFL. But perception matters. When outside voices keep bringing up alternatives, it plants seeds. Even if the team hasn't said anything publicly, even if the coaching staff stays neutral, even if the front office avoids direct answers. And that's where things get interesting. Because while media speculation circled, there weren't any direct signals from inside the building suggesting panic. No public criticism, no visible tension, no subtle distancing. In fact, comments from leadership have leaned toward development and growth rather than replacement. That contrast is what makes this moment fascinating. On one side, analysts debating leverage, competition, and long-term insurance policies. On the other, teammates describing a quarterback who commands the room and connects off the field. Two completely different narratives running at the same time. And here's the reality about NFL quarterback rooms: competition is always present. Even when a starter is secure, teams prepare, they evaluate, they protect themselves from uncertainty. That doesn't automatically mean doubt, it often means responsibility. But perception doesn't always separate those lines. When fans hear another name mentioned, they assume instability. When insiders talk about monitoring situations, people assume contingency plans are already in motion. And sometimes that snowballs faster than facts. That's why Judkins' comments landed the way they did. Because they cut through speculation, not with a press release, not with a headline, but with something simpler: chemistry. Still, chemistry alone doesn't quiet every debate. And what happened next added another layer to this entire quarterback conversation. And then there's the name that still hangs over everything: Deshaun Watson. No matter how much the conversation shifts toward youth, development, or the future, Watson's presence financially and structurally remains part of the Browns' reality. His contract alone guarantees that. Massive cap implications, long-term commitments, expectations that once came with franchise-level belief. But expectations and outcomes haven't always aligned. Injuries disrupted momentum, inconsistency raised eyebrows, and when availability becomes unpredictable at the quarterback position, questions naturally follow, not accusations, not conclusions, just questions. Some fans believe the organization already knows it needs a long-term pivot. Reports claim front offices quietly plan transitions years before the public sees it. Rumors suggest Cleveland has been evaluating contingency paths behind closed doors. None of that is confirmed, but the speculation hasn't faded. And that's what creates the tension. Because publicly, the Browns can't simply move on overnight. Financially, it's complicated. Structurally, it's layered. You don't absorb contracts of that size without strategic timing, but internally, teams are always thinking ahead. That's where Shedeur Sanders' emergence becomes relevant. If you're building toward youth, if you're talking about developing young talent, if the head coaching search emphasized growth and long-term culture, then naturally people connect dots. But here, the key distinction: preparing for the future doesn't automatically mean abandoning the present. Watson still exists in this equation: his experience, his veteran presence, his contract leverage. And in NFL locker rooms, veterans command a certain respect, especially when they've been through the league's highest pressure moments. That dynamic matters. Because quarterback rooms are delicate ecosystems, too much hype around the new name can feel like displacement, too much loyalty to the old guard can stall progress. Balance is everything. Some analysts argue Cleveland is walking that tightrope right now. Others believe the franchise is simply letting competition play out organically. Both interpretations have traction. And yet, inside the building, the messaging hasn't sounded chaotic. There's no public friction, no leaked frustration, no visible divide between generations. Which raises an interesting question. Is the Watson shadow actually internal or mostly external? Sometimes the loudest pressure comes from outside the locker room, from talk shows, from social media debates, from fan narratives that evolve faster than official statements. But what if inside the facility, it's quieter than we think? What if development and evaluation are happening without drama? Because if that's true, then this isn't a controversy. It's a transition. And that subtle difference could define the entire direction of this franchise moving forward. But while everyone debates quarterbacks, the real blueprint might be coming from the top. Andrew Berry hasn't been loud about it, he hasn't made dramatic declarations, but if you listen closely to how he talks about roster construction, one theme keeps surfacing: youth, development, sustainability. That's not accidental. Berry has repeatedly emphasized building through young talent, draft capital, rookie contracts, players who can grow together instead of aging out together. And when a general manager starts talking like that, it usually signals a long-term recalibration. Because here's the reality: veteran-heavy teams can compete fast, but they rarely stay flexible. Cap space tightens, contracts balloon, windows close quicker than fans expect. A younger core changes that math. Some fans believe this shift has already started quietly. The Browns have leaned into adding players still on rookie deals. They've shown interest in development-focused coaching. They've stressed internal growth over splashy headlines. That's a philosophy shift. And it matters at quarterback more than anywhere else. A young quarterback on a rookie contract gives a franchise breathing room, financial flexibility, the ability to stack talent around him. That formula isn't new, it's the model many contenders have followed in recent years. Now, does that automatically mean Cleveland is planning a full pivot? Not necessarily. But it does mean they're preparing options. Reports claim Barry wanted a coaching staff capable of mentoring young players, not just managing veterans. That detail raised eyebrows because it hinted at a broader direction. You don't prioritize youth development unless you intend to lean into it. And that's where the quarterback discussion naturally loops back in. If the Browns truly envision a multi-year build around a developing nucleus, then the signal becomes clearer. Leadership traits, locker room belief, chemistry with fellow young players. Those factors suddenly carry more weight than just experience alone. But here's what makes Barry's approach interesting. He doesn't operate emotionally, he doesn't chase media narratives, he rarely responds to outside noise. His moves tend to be calculated, layered, sometimes even misunderstood in the moment. Which creates a quiet tension. Because fans want immediate clarity, they want a declared QB1, they want certainty. Front offices, however, thrive in ambiguity. It protects leverage, it preserves flexibility. Some analysts argue Barry is positioning the Browns to transition smoothly when the timing is right. Others believe he's simply strengthening the roster regardless of who plays quarterback. Both interpretations can exist at the same time. That's the chess match. Younger core, development emphasis, locker room chemistry, financial flexibility, none of these pieces exist in isolation, they connect. And when you zoom out, the picture starts forming. This might not be about replacing anyone overnight. It might be about preparing for the next era before the current one fully fades. And if that's true, Andrew Barry isn't reacting to headlines. He's building a runway. The only question now is who eventually takes off from it. But not everyone was sold immediately. For all the praise about talent, arm strength, and confidence, leadership became the quiet question hovering around Shedeur Sanders. Not because teammates openly doubted him, but because the outside world loves to test quarterbacks differently. And when your last name is Sanders, the microscope isn't normal. Some critics argued that playing under Deion Sanders created a protected environment. They questioned whether his authority in the locker room was organic or inherited. Fair or not, those conversations circulated long before he ever stepped into an NFL building. That's the burden of perception. Reports claim certain analysts wondered whether veteran players would respond the same way to him at the pro level. Rumors suggested that personality, confidence, flash, visibility could be interpreted differently in an NFL locker room filled with grown men fighting for contracts. But perception and reality don't always match. Inside Colorado's program, multiple teammates publicly backed him, not with forced sound bites but with consistent messaging, work ethic, attention to detail, accountability after losses. That matters more than viral clips ever will. Still, skepticism lingered. Quarterbacks aren't just evaluated on throws, they're evaluated on tone, body language, post-game interviews, how they handle adversity when cameras are still rolling. And adversity did come. There were tough losses, national criticism, defensive struggles that had nothing to do with him but still reflected on the team's record. In those moments, the spotlight intensified. Some fans believe that's where leadership is truly tested, not when everything's smooth, but when everything's loud. And that's when the conversation quietly shifted. Instead of focusing solely on highlight throws, analysts began dissecting how he handled pressure. Did he blame teammates, did he deflect, or did he absorb it? From most accounts, he owned it. But that wasn't enough for everyone. There's a long-standing NFL culture debate about what leadership should look like. Should it be quiet and stoic, or confident and expressive? Some franchises prefer reserved command, others embrace visible swagger. Shedeur doesn't fit the old-school mold, and that unsettles certain evaluators. Some commentators have hinted that charisma can be misread as ego. Others argue that modern locker rooms connect differently than they did 15 years ago. Younger cores often gravitate toward authenticity over tradition. That distinction matters in Cleveland. If the Browns are indeed building around a younger nucleus, the definition of leadership shifts. It's less about hierarchy and more about connection, less about seniority and more about influence. And influence is earned in moments no camera captures. Teammates speaking up, defending you publicly, spending time outside the facility. Those signals don't show up in stat sheets, but they reveal alignment. Still, until a quarterback proves it on Sundays at the highest level, doubts never fully disappear. That's the nature of the position. Leadership questions follow every young quarterback, but for Shedeur, they've been amplified by narrative, family name, and spotlight. The real test won't be what analysts speculate. It will be how the locker room responds when adversity hits at the NFL level. Because in this league, belief isn't declared. It's earned. And once it's earned, everything changes. But here's the part that actually shifts momentum. It's not media debates. It's not analyst rankings. It's not off-season rumors. It's teammates. When a quarterback's own locker room starts speaking up unprompted, that carries weight. Real weight, because players don't protect narratives, they protect chemistry. And chemistry isn't fakeable. When Quinshon Judkins publicly talked about Shedeur being the guy, it wasn't just a compliment, it was a signal. He didn't hesitate, he didn't sound rehearsed, he spoke about detail in practice, time spent outside the building, mutual respect. That's not surface-level praise. That's day-to-day proximity. See, quarterbacks can win press conferences, but they don't win locker rooms with quotes. They win them on Wednesdays, in film sessions, in conditioning drills, in accountability moments when no camera is rolling. And that's where validation becomes powerful. Some fans believe teammate endorsements are more telling than any coach's public statement. Reports claim that players know before the front office ever announces anything. Rumors suggest locker rooms quietly decide leadership long before media does. None of that is officially confirmed, but history supports the idea. Look around the league. When teammates start backing a quarterback organically, it usually means belief has already formed internally. Not hype, not projection, belief. And that belief changes the energy of competition. Because quarterback battles aren't just about talent, they're about gravity. Who do players gravitate toward? Who commands attention without demanding it? Who sets the tone when practice intensity dips? Judkins' comments hinted at something subtle, that Shedeur isn't isolated, he's integrated. That matters. A young quarterback trying to take control of a locker room filled with veterans can feel forced. But when players voluntarily describe him as attentive, fun, and detailed, that paints a different picture. It suggests alignment. And alignment is dangerous in a good way. Some critics will say it's just off-season talk, just microphones and headlines. But there's a difference between generic praise and specific traits. When teammates mention practice habits and leadership voice, that's behavioral evidence. That's not marketing. That's observation. And what happened next caught everyone off guard. Instead of the conversation revolving around outside speculation, Malik Willis rumors, veteran placeholders, media debate, the focus subtly shifted inward, toward chemistry, toward internal belief. That's when narratives lose control. Because once a locker room starts rallying around a name, outside noise gets quieter inside the building. Now, does one teammate endorsement lock in a franchise decision? Of course not. NFL front offices don't operate emotionally. Depth charts aren't written based on podcast clips. But culture is shaped by moments like that. Moments where a star running back casually confirms what many suspected, that the quarterback already has the room. And once a quarterback has the room, everything accelerates. Confidence grows, play calling opens up, body language shifts. Even competition feels different because it's no longer about doubt, it's about sharpening. Some fans believe this is the beginning of a quiet turning point. Reports claim Cleveland's young core is bonding faster than expected. Rumors suggest leadership lines are becoming clearer. Again, unconfirmed. But the tone feels different. Because when validation comes from within, it carries more weight than any analyst segment ever could. Teammate belief doesn't guarantee success, but it does create momentum. And in the NFL, momentum often decides who truly becomes the guy. The question now is whether Shedeur wants it. It's whether the rest of the league is ready for what happens when a locker room fully commits. So what does all of this actually mean when the season gets closer? Because off-season belief is one thing, September football is another. Right now, everything feels controlled, structured, optimistic, teammates are supportive, front office messaging is measured, coaches are emphasizing development, on the surface it looks steady. But once training camp intensity ramps up, dynamics change. Reps get competitive, mistakes get magnified, and quarterback hierarchies start revealing themselves without anyone needing to announce them. If Shedeur continues building momentum inside the locker room, the shift could become undeniable. Not because of headlines, but because of rhythm, timing with receivers, command at the line, trust in high-pressure situations during preseason snaps. That's when belief turns into evidence. Some fans believe the Browns are quietly setting the stage for a transition. Reports claim the organization wants clarity before midseason. Rumors suggest internal evaluations are already more advanced than the public realizes. None of that is confirmed. But what is clear is this: Cleveland cannot afford uncertainty for long. The AFC isn't forgiving, division games aren't patient. If a quarterback grabs control early, coaches typically lean into stability. Continuity wins more games than constant rotation. And that's where momentum becomes powerful. If teammates continue voicing confidence publicly and that confidence translates onto the field, it forces difficult decisions to surface sooner rather than later. But here's the other side. Competition sharpens everyone. Veterans don't simply fade because narratives shift. Experience still matters, defensive disguises get more complex. Blitz packages get more creative. The speed of NFL windows closes faster than anything Shedeur saw in college. Early season adversity could either solidify the locker room's belief or test it. And what happens next caught everyone off guard in similar situations across the league before. Sometimes a young quarterback starts fast and the building rallies instantly. Other times, growing pains create hesitation. The difference often isn't talent, it's response. Response to pressure. Response to turnovers. Response to 2-minute drills when the crowd gets restless. Heading into the season, Cleveland's biggest advantage might not be scheme, it might be alignment. If the young core truly believes in its quarterback, that chemistry can speed up development curves. Communication improves, players fight harder on broken plays, energy feels different on the sideline. But alignment only survives if performance keeps pace. That's when the conversation quietly shifts from potential to production. Because at the NFL level, projection expires quickly. Some analysts argue this is the most pivotal stretch of the Browns' recent era, not because of drama, not because of controversy, but because identity is forming in real time. Is this still a veteran-led bridge period? Or is this the beginning of a new core defining itself? Training camp won't answer everything, preseason won't either, but tone gets established early, and once tone is set, teams rarely reverse it midstream without friction. The fascinating part: nothing explosive has happened. No public divide, no locker room leak, no front office declaration. Just subtle momentum building around one name. Heading into the season, the Browns don't need hype. They need clarity. And clarity usually reveals itself the moment real football begins. Because when the lights come on and the pressure spikes, belief either strengthens or it fractures. Cleveland is about to find out which direction this locker room is truly leaning. And once that answer becomes visible, everything changes. And here's the part most people are missing. The real power in this situation isn't coming from headlines. It's not coming from analyst debates. It's not coming from off-season rankings or social media arguments. It's coming from inside the building. Because when you strip away the noise, the speculation, the gossip, the veteran rumors, the contract talk, what actually determines a franchise's direction is belief. Not public belief. Locker room belief. And that's a completely different currency. Headlines can hype a quarterback, they can criticize him, they can elevate him one week and question him the next, but none of that changes what happens between teammates during practice. None of it affects who players naturally gravitate toward in high-pressure moments. Some fans believe the media drives quarterback narratives. Reports claim certain outlets shape perception long before performance settles debates. Rumors suggest hype cycles can artificially accelerate expectations. But perception doesn't throw passes. Chemistry does. And that's why this entire conversation feels bigger than just QB1. When teammates voluntarily speak about leadership, when they highlight work ethic instead of just talent, when they mention spending time together outside the facility, that signals something more foundational. That signals connection. Connection is what sustains teams through adversity. Because adversity is coming, it always does. There will be a bad game, a tough loss, a 2-interception night, a defensive collapse that unfairly lands on the quarterback's shoulders. That's the NFL. No young quarterback escapes that phase. The difference maker is whether those moments happen. It's what the locker room does after they happen. Do they fracture? Or do they rally? That's when belief becomes visible. Right now, Cleveland doesn't look divided. It doesn't look chaotic. It doesn't look like a team wrestling publicly with identity. If anything, it looks quietly aligned, at least among the younger core. And that's where things get interesting. Because transitions in the NFL rarely begin with announcements, they begin with energy shifts, subtle changes, a different tone in interviews, a different body language in huddles, a different rhythm in practice reps. And once that shift reaches a tipping point, decisions that once felt complicated suddenly feel obvious. But that wasn't the full picture. Because here's the twist. This isn't about replacing anyone overnight. It isn't about forcing controversy. It isn't about creating drama where none officially exists. It's about momentum. Momentum doesn't need permission. If a quarterback gains trust organically, momentum builds. If teammates speak his name with confidence, momentum builds. If coaches quietly increase responsibility, momentum builds. And once momentum builds, it becomes very hard to reverse. Some analysts argue this is still too early, that off-season praise doesn't guarantee regular season control, that veterans still hold leverage, that contracts still matter. All of that is fair. But belief matters too. And belief spreads. It spreads in film rooms. It spreads in huddles. It spreads when one player defends another publicly without being asked. That's when the conversation quietly shifts from competition to direction. And direction is what franchises crave. Because uncertainty stalls growth, clarity accelerates it. Right now, the Browns appear to be approaching a crossroads, not a dramatic one, not a chaotic one, but a defining one. A moment where identity solidifies. Is this still a bridge period? Or is this the foundation of something new? The real power isn't in podcast clips. It isn't in off-season rankings. It isn't even in who's listed first on a depth chart in June. The real power is in who the locker room listens to when things get uncomfortable. And once that answer becomes undeniable, the headlines won't matter anymore. They'll simply catch up to what the building already knows.